So we are going to be working on our MVC demo authentication file. And this particular file has two context files. We have one that is the one that we created, member DB context. And then we've got one that was created when we created the app and we turned on authentication. And that one, I believe, is in identity models. So it's application DB context. And the reason some of you are having problems running the app is because the application DB context has a base of default connection. And in order for us to have multiple context files, in order for them to work, they all have to have the same base. And right now, we don't have a base specified for member DB context. So that is a change that we need to make. We actually have to specify the same base as the application DB context file. Then the next change that we're going to make is we're going to change the web config file so that both of them are using a brand new database. We're just going to give the database a new name, kind of clean that up so that when we execute the migrations, it just creates a brand new file. And then the third thing that we're going to do is actually run the migrations. And we're going to have to do it in two separate steps because each context file has to have migrations run separately. And if you remember when we did the Contasso migrations, it was actually pretty easy because we just said enable migrations. Well, because we have two context files, we have to be a little bit more specific. We can't just say enable migrations. We actually have to use a context type name parameter and give it the path to the member DB context. And then in the second set of migrations, we have to do the same thing and give it the path to the application DB context file. Okay, so these migrations have to be completely separate. So if you guys have your authentication MVC demo handy, you can go ahead and open it up and we're going to walk through this. So I will give you guys a minute to open that up. So are you guys ready?
Yeah, I am.
So what we're going to start with is we're going to open up member DB context, and that's in your models folder. And then we actually have to take this line that says public member DB context base default connection, and we have to insert that above the DB set line. So we're going to put it right here. Okay, and if you're concerned about typos, you certainly can copy paste. Okay, otherwise you can type it in. And then once you get there, you're going to save it. And then let me know when you guys are ready to move on to modifying our web config file. Are you guys ready?
I'm okay.
Jim, are you ready? Okay, well, we can wait a minute, Jim. Okay, so why don't we open up web config? Because that's where the next change needs to happen. And I think what we'll do is we'll just copy this connection string and paste it over this. That way we know we have the right thing in there. And the name of the database should be authentication 1. And since I have already run this a couple times, I'm going to change my name a little bit so that this time it generates a brand new one. Okay, so we should have the new connection string in there. And then at the bottom where we inserted the initializer and the context file, we're going to comment that out because that's not going to run anymore once we do the migrations. So I'm just going to stick in an HTML comment here. Oops, hopefully. And actually that needs to go down. So once you've got the comment and we have changed the code for the connection string, going to go ahead and save everything. And then you're going to want to run a build. And hopefully that succeeded for everybody, right?
Probably would have if I actually had it.
You can't find your file, Kenny?
No, I swear I had it before, and I swear it was on GitHub. Can't find it on GitHub or my flash drive unless it's in the 228 by accident.
Oh, well, maybe that is where you put it.
just look in the 228 folder real quick. I'll catch up if I do find it.
Okay. If you don't have it, you'll probably have to recreate it, but it was kind of short.
Yeah, I'm sure I could do it on my own time if I wanted to. I'll probably do that sometime tomorrow because I have tomorrow off.
Okay. So everybody else is set, right? Hopefully. Okay, because we're going to move on to migrations next. Okay. So we have to do the migrations in 2 steps. And so we're going to do that in the Package Manager console. If you don't have it open, you have to go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, choose the Package Manager console. Okay, I got tired of opening mine, so I just kind of docked it with everything else. Mainly because I'm kind of lazy and it's kind of convenient down there. So once you see the PM prompt, okay, then we can go ahead and execute the command to enable migrations. And we're going to do the member DB context first. So the command that we are going to use is kind of lengthy. And if you want to copy and paste, you can. So we are enabling the migrations. And the context name is mvcdemo.models.memberdbcontext. And then this parameter that kind of got chopped off on mine is migrations directory. So that parameter creates a folder. So the folder that we're going to use for the member DB context is called data context migrations. So we're going to go ahead and press enter and run that. And then when it's done, if we look in our Solution Explorer, we are going to see this new data context migrations folder. And then inside that folder is going to be the configuration.cs file. And we're going to, and actually it opened it for us. We are going to make a couple little tweaks to this file because at this point, it's not going to run any of our seed data. And we would actually like it to run the seed data. So after the comments here in the seed method, we're basically going to take the code that was in our initializer and copy and paste it in here. So if we open up the initializer, okay, and I know mine's not formatted very well. Let me fix that. So the code that creates the variable where we've got the new membership and then the code that actually adds it and saves the changes, that is the code that we're going to copy. Okay, so we can go ahead. Oop, I did V. We can do a Control C to copy. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to paste it right in here. And then in order for this to work, we do need to modify the using statements because we do need to include mvcdemo.models. And let's see, there's a couple other ones. We need to include the system collections.generic. And I think those are the only 2 we have to add, but I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of these. Okay, and the ones that are new are this models statement, so it knows where to go for the models, and then the collection statement. So once you've got this in here, we're going to save it and we're going to run a build. And then we can continue moving forward with the migrations. So we're going to go back to our package manager console. And the first migration, you usually give a name of like initial create or initial. And so we're going to use the add migration command. We still have to tell it where to go for the configuration file. So we've got add migration. We've got the configuration parameter. We're telling it to go to mvcdemo.data context migrations. Okay, that's the folder that configuration is in. And then we tell it the name of the file. Okay, and then we're going to call this initial. Okay, you could call it initial create. Okay, just something indicating it's the first one. And what it does when you use add migration is it puts a date timestamp in front of whatever name you specify. So we're going to go ahead and press enter. And typically it comes back with yellow highlighting. So I would say that is completely normal. Okay, and so this did work, and we can see the file is here with a date timestamp. And then it did open the file. And from last week, if you remember, we have an up and a down method. So the up method is going to create the tables. And if there's a problem, the down method backs out of it. So anybody having a problem at this point? So I will take silence as meaning everything is good. Okay. So
Silence for me is good because
I
don't have
know
it.
you're watching. So we're going to move on to update. So the update actually creates the database. Okay, so we are going to copy this code. So the command is update database. And because we have multiple context files, we have to tell it where the configuration is located. So for us, mvcdemo.contextmigrations.configuration. And the verbose parameter is optional. If you have it, it's going to show you everything it's doing, which is kind of nice to see, especially when you're first doing the migrations. I think last week we didn't use verbose, so this time we'll use it, and you should see a lot more output. So we're going to go ahead and press enter. And as I mentioned last week, if there is going to be a problem with migrations, typically it's in this step. Okay, so if we watch, we should be able to see the SQL statements, although that ran really quick. If you scroll up, you should actually be able to see the create table and the insert statements. Okay, and then at the bottom, it said it was running the seed method, so it did work. So at this point, we've got one of our context files all set up, and now we have to do the other one. So for the other one, it's basically the same 3 steps. It's just that now we're using a different context file. So for enable, we are now going to tell it the context type name is mvcdemo.models.applicationDB context, because that was our other file. And we're going to put related files that it creates in a different directory. We're going to call it application context migrations. So the configuration file, the initial creation file, anything that we do regarding this particular context is going to go into the application context migrations folder. So we're going to go ahead and press enter. And when it's done, we're going to see another folder over in the Solution Explorer. Okay, and so that should appear with a configuration file in it. And so you can kind of see what that looks like. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and run the ad. And we'll call this one initial also. So again, we have to give it a parameter telling it where the configuration is located, mbcdemo.applicationcontextmigrations.configuration, and we're going to call this file initial. And when it's done, we should see that initial file in the application context migrations folder. And then you can see it's creating multiple tables. And these are all part of the built-in authentication that comes with MVC5. And then you can see if there was any kind of a problem, it would back out of everything. So it's dropping foreign keys and indexing, and then it's dropping tables. So at this point, we are ready to update the database. So we are going to run the update database command. And that time I actually did quickly see the SQL code kind of flash by, but if you scroll up, you can actually see it. And that's what that verbose parameter does. So at this point, we should be able to run a build and actually execute this. And we should be able to get in to the members section, and we also should be able to register users. And if you had been having a problem with that, if you'd been having errors, this should have fixed it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run it. I never know where the screen's going to pop up. So if I go into membership, it should display. And then if I go into register, I should be able to add. Yep, and that worked as well. Now if I go into membership, I should be able to do whatever I want because I have a registered user. So that should be working for everybody. Is anyone having a problem with it? Okay, so I'm assuming y'all are good, right? Are we ready to move on to user roles? So for your own capstone projects, what we just did here, you guys are going to need to do. So you are going to have to use the same base, and I would just use the default one. because you are using that authentication piece. And then I would put in that new connection string in the web config, and then do the migration separately, just like we did it here. And then your database should run fine. Now, after you do the migrations, anytime you change a model or you change data, that your seed data, you actually will have to do an update database. Okay, and in fact, if you change the model, you'll do an add migration, and then you'll do an update database. Okay, and you will actually see that on Thursday because we do make some changes, and we do have to add migrations a couple times. So you'll kind of see how that works. So a couple weeks ago with this particular file, if you guys remember, in the member controller, let's see, I think it was membership, wasn't it? Maybe I don't even have it in this one. We did add some authentication. And so what we're going to do today is kind of expand on that. And we're actually going to create roles. So I think last time we had, we used authorization, I believe, and then we allowed anonymous on the index. And what we're going to do today is we're going to assign specific roles, and then we're going to allow people with certain roles to make certain changes. So we'll allow people with certain roles to edit or create. And in order to do the user roles, we are going to have to make some changes to some of the files. So the code that we need to use to create the roles has to be added to the startup file. And this is in the root. So we might as well open up that file. And I'm going to kind of pop right down here to the hands-on. So while we're talking about it, we'll go ahead and make the change. So for our startup file, this is all we have right now, which is not a whole lot. And so you'll notice that in this one that we're going to copy and paste, underneath config auth, we have create roles. So we're actually calling a function, which we made private. Okay, so this is the only place it can be called from. And what it does is it creates 4 different user roles. We are creating visitor, administrator, manager, and user. Okay, and so we are using, we first create a role manager object, and then we're using that object to create the various roles. Okay, so this is what we're calling the roles. I mean, if you guys are doing your own app, you could call them whatever you want. Okay, and in order to execute all this code, you can see we do need some additional using statements up at the top. So we're going to go ahead and just copy all of this. And we're going to paste it in. And then we'll save our changes and run a build. Okay, and so what we're going to do next is we're going to run the app as long as your build succeeded. Because this is in the startup, running the app should create these roles for us. Okay, so I'm going to log out and then I'm going to exit out. So to make sure these roles are there, we are going to go into the SQL Server Object Explorer. And if you don't have yours on the tab, you just go into View and you should see it in the menu. And it should be in this top database. And you can see I just have a ton of this stuff in here. And yours is going to be called Authentication 1. I've done this multiple times, so I called mine Authentication 10, just so I could find it. And we're going to expand here so we can see our tables. And then the table that you want to open in View is ASP.NET Roles. So if we right click on that and we say View Data, we should see our roles listed. So the first step in using roles is to create the roles, which is what we just did. Now that we have roles, our next step is to assign them. So is anybody having problems at this point? Because it's pretty hard to assign roles if you don't have them created.
Where did you find them at again? I'm sorry.
Okay, go into your SQL Server Object Explorer,
Uh-huh.
and then you probably see 2 local DBs. It's in the top one. You have to expand the top one and expand databases. And then you should see Authentication 1 listed.
Okay.
And
And
you're going to expand Authentication 1. And then right click on ASP.NET Roles and choose View Data.
under tables.
Yeah.
Okay. ASP.NET roles.
Yep. On mine, it's the second one listed.
Okay. Okay, yeah, there is 2.
You got it?
ASP.NET roles
Yep.
or user? Okay.
No,
Roles.
ASP.NET Roles.
Okay. Yeah, I have it now.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a little confusing because the names of these tables are super close, but you can see all of these tables from net roles down to ASP.NET users. These were all created in that application DB context when we did the migrations for that one. The only one that was in our membership DB context was this one little membership table. Okay, so we've got our roles. Our next step is assigning roles. So we are going to assign roles to specific users. And in order to do that, we are going to modify the identity model. So we're going to get out of the SQL Server Object Explorer, go back to our Solution Explorer, and we are going to display identity model. And there is basically one line that we need to add to this. So in the application user class, and this is going to be basically right below the opening brace. So it's above public async. We are going to add a little line here for user role. So it's public string user role and get set. So that's the only change we need to make to the identity model. So we'll go ahead, save it. I always like to run a build, so we'll do that. And then we need to add the user role property to our register view. And so this is under models. Okay, so these are models obviously that we did not create, but if you expand the account view model, you will see there is a register view model, and that is the one we need to open. And I've kind of highlighted it here. Okay, and so what we need to do is add the user role to this model. So at the top, we have required email address, name, email, all of that. So we're going to put this right below that. And we are going to give it this attribute of required. And we'll give it a little display name. And then we're going to insert the property. So once you have it there, you're going to save. And we'll go ahead, run a build. And then we have to change a view, because now that we've got it in the model, we do not have it in the view. And kind of while we're testing this, we're going to add radio buttons for all 4 roles: admin, manager, user, and visitor. Once you are out of the testing phase, you probably would remove admin and manager and just let, normal people who register as users or visitors. But for right now, we're going to keep all 4 of them in there. So we are going to open up register.cshtml. So this is down in the views section. And it's under account. Okay, and where we are going to insert these option buttons is below the password. So if we're looking through the code here, we have password, we have confirm password, and it's right below that we're going to add the code. Now, I'm kind of a lazy typist, so if I'm looking for things that I can copy, I'm probably just going to copy this confirm password stuff and change it. Okay, because it starts with div class equal form group, so that's fine. The label is going to have to change a little bit, right? So instead of confirm password, we have user role. But the class stays the same. And then for the line below, the div with the class MD10, that stays the same. So the only other thing I need to change is what's actually going to be displaying. So instead of a password, I'm actually displaying a radio button. And I don't think it really matters if the M is upper or lowercase, to be quite honest. So if you want to leave it lowercase, that's fine. And then I'm going to give it a little value here of admin. And then let's see, for my class, and this is Bootstrap class, it's going to be radio inline. And then I'm adding a little text onto the end there. So once you have the first line adjusted, you should be able to copy that. And the only thing you really have to change is the 2 references to admin. So I'm going to paste this 3 times. So let me know when you guys are ready to move on to the next thing we have to do, which is changing the account controller.
I'm good when everybody else is.
Okay.
I'm good as well.
Okay. Is everybody else ready? Okay. So we are going to go ahead and open up the account controller. And so what we need to change is we basically have to add user role to this little action method. It's the register action method, kind of goes with the register view that we just changed. Okay, and so we don't need to do the first one. We actually need to do the second one. So right above the return redirect to action statement, we need to add some code that includes our user role. And we want model in front of that. So after you get that line added, do a save all, and run a build. And because we actually changed the model in the account controller, we do need to run migrations. And all we have
Hey,
to do,
Lisa,
yeah,
do we not need that user role model, that user role up top? It goes within the variable user.
oh, yes, we probably do.
Okay.
What is it? Let me look. Yeah, we do. Otherwise, it won't pass it. Good catch. All right, where is it? That is right here. Equals model. Okay, make sure you guys get that in there. Otherwise, it's not going to pass it along for us or pull it in. All right, then we do need to save it again and run another build. I think that was all we have to change. Let me double check. Yeah. So after you do that, then we're going to go into the package manager console. And because we changed the model, we have to run add migration. And typically, you still have to use configuration because we have to tell it where to put the migration file. And typically when you name the file after the first initial creation, the name is going to be kind of reflective of the change that you made. So we are working on user roles, so that's what we're going to name the file. Okay, and so what this did is it added another file with a date time stamp to the application context migrations. And then you can see what it's doing in the up method. It's just adding a column to the table. And if for some reason that didn't work, it backs out of it. And then we're going to go ahead and update. Okay, so again, we're telling it where to go for the configuration file. And we're using verbose so that we can see the SQL commands. Although they display super fast. Okay, so here is the alter table command that it's using to insert that column. So at this point, we should be able to run the app. And what you're going to want to do is add a couple new users. I would add 3. One that is an administrator, one that is a manager, and then maybe one that's a regular user. And when you go into register, you will notice that now we have these option buttons to select what kind of user role the new person is going to have. And then once you do that, you can go ahead and exit out. Because we're going to be editing the membership controller, and we're going to be only authorizing certain roles for editing permission.
So would doing any of the stuff that we just did reset the password
For
like
your
'cause
first person?
no, like so in the first time we did this worked on the authentication,
Mm-hmm.
we changed the password rules to like 6 characters.
To 8.
Or was it 8?
Yeah, they were
Okay.
initially 6 and we changed them to 8.
Oh, okay. I thought it was at 8 and we changed it to 6.
Nope.
Okay, it was the other way around.
Yep.
All right.
No, we made it. Usually passwords have to be longer than 6.
Okay.
So once you guys have those 3 users set up, you're going to want to open up memberships controller. And I'm thinking that you guys probably have an authorize attribute. Is it above the class? I'm thinking that is where you guys have authorize.
Yeah, it's above the class.
Yeah, so I'm going to add that to mine. So mine looks the same. And then you guys have allow anonymous right here, right?
Correct.
All right. So what we're going to do is only people with admin or manager roles are going to be allowed to edit. So we're going to find our edit section. And we're going to add authorize. Hopefully spell it right. And then in parentheses, we're going to say roles equal. And we're going to limit this to administrators and managers. So what that means is that 2 of your users that you added should be able to do editing, but the third one will not. It'll just reroute them. So we're going to go ahead and do a little save all. Going to run a build. And then we'll run our app. So I used the Scooby game in case you guys weren't watching. So Velma is a regular user. So Velma can see the membership data, but she's not going to be allowed to edit. And you can see it just rerouted her right to login. And so Scrappy and Shaggy should be able to do editing. So we'll try Shaggy. Shaggy was an administrator. And so if I try to edit, I can get in because it's allowing administrators. And if I log in with Scrappy, that should also work. Okay, so it is working with Scrappy as well. So you guys can kind of see the difference between authenticating and authorizing. So authorizing deals with giving people permission. Authenticating is just you are who you say you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, we are done with this one. In fact, you're never going to have to see it again. So make sure you put it up on GitHub. If you want to stick around for lab and run it for me, I can just correct it right now because we're kind of moving into lab for the last hour. And as far as homework assignments, there really is no additional assignment other than adding the migrations to your capstone project. And you're going to have to add them the exact same way that we just did them. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording.